So in today's lesson, we're going to be going through another Trinity College London Grade 2 Group A piece. So looking at the sheet music, at the top of the page, you've got the song title, which is Cherry Blue. And then beneath that, to the left-hand side, it says Funk Rock. So that's the style or the genre of the piece. So it's a rocky style piece with a bit of funk infused in there. So it's funk rock. And then beside that, it says a quarter note equals 120. So that's the tempo of the piece. So you've got a quarter note pulse. And that pulse is going to be 120 quarter notes per minute. Okay, so there's 2 quarter notes every second. So 1 quarter note in half a second. Okay, so it's quite a fast tempo. It's quite a push to this piece. Beneath that, you've got your first bar of music. So you can see your percussion clef at the start of the bar there. Just letting you know it's drum notation on the stave. And then we've got our time signature beside that. So our time signature for this piece is 4/4. We've got a 4 at the top, which tells us there's 4 beats in the bar. So in each bar, we're going to be counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and then the bottom number being 4 tells us each one of those beats is a quarter note. So you're feeling 4 quarter note beats in the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're all quarter notes, these beats. Okay? So now we've got that information, we can take a look at the first bar of music. So in the first bar, you've got a fill. Okay, so you've got a rest on the 1. We're resting for an 8th note. So you don't play the 1. You need to make sure you feel the 1, but don't play it. So we rest for an 8th note, and then we come in on the 8th note on the upbeat of 1, on the and of 1. We're playing a snare there, and we're going to play that with the left hand. So the first beat, you've got rest and. So play that and with the left hand on the snare. And then we've got 8th notes on the 2. So you've got 2 and. We're going to play right, left on the snare. Okay, so those 2 beats, rest and 2 and. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, rest and 2 and. Then we come on to the third beat where we got 16 notes on the downbeat and an 8th note on the upbeat. So that rhythm 3 and. And we're going to play that on the high tom or the small tom. So you're going to play right, left, right. So you got. And then we come over for the last beat on the medium tom where we're playing an 8th note on the 4 with a right hand. And then we're playing another 8th note on the and of 4, left hand on the floor tom. So that last beat is medium tom, floor tom, right, left. Okay, so the whole fill, the rhythm, is rest and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so we're going snare for the first 2 beats, high tom for the third beat, and then we're split between the mid tom and the floor tom for the final beat. Okay, so we got rest, sticking, rest, left, right, left, right, left, right, right, left. Okay, so let's give that bar a try. We'll loop it through, and what we'll do is we'll have a bar's rest afterwards. Okay, so we're going to play 1 bar of the fill, rest for a bar. 1 bar of the fill, rest for a bar. Okay, just loop those just to get a feel for that, the rhythm and the orchestration of the fill. And beneath the bar, you can see we've got MF, which is short for mezzo forte, which means half loud. So you want to play that about your normal playing level. Okay, so let's try that fill. The first bar looped through with a bar of rest afterwards. And then in the second bar, we're still continuing with a fill. So we've got a second bar of fill. You've got 8th notes for the whole bar for this rhythm. So you've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, and we're going to play single strokes throughout this whole bar. We've got snare for the first note. Then we move up to the next 8th note on the high tom. Then we move the right hand to the mid tom, left hand to the low tom. So you're going around the 4 drums here. Just right, left, as single strokes. Okay, so remember you need to move your body as you go around the kit so as not to get your hand or your arm in the way as you come over to play that last left stroke on the floor tom. Okay, if you stay stationary, your hand's more likely to be in the way here when you play that last stroke. Okay, and there's nothing worse than hitting yourself with your own stick. All right, so make sure as you're moving around the kit, you're moving your body around there. See me opening up here. So you've got right, left. So that arm's well out the way of my left stroke, just hitting that floor tom. Okay, so you're going round the kit for 8th notes. Then what happens is when you get round here on the end of 2, you come back round. Okay, so you hit that and of 2, and then you come back the other way. So medium tom for the and of 3, sorry, for the 3, and then you got the and of tom, the and of 3 on the high tom, then the 4 on the snare, and then we crash on the and of 4. Okay, so the second half of the fill, we start on mid tom with the right hand. So you've got mid tom, high tom with the left hand, snare drum with the right hand, crash with the left hand. So let's try the second half just with the hands. Okay, so you're going forwards around the kit, and then as soon as you hit that floor tom with the left hand, you come back round. Finish with a crash. Okay, so just single strokes. So let's try those 8 eighth notes. Okay, so you want to get a hold of that, going forwards and backwards in eighth notes, and on that last note where you hit the crash with the left hand, okay, so your weak hand you're crashing with here, you've got an accent above that crash. You need to hit that with more emphasis, you need to hit that with more force, so it's louder, and you also want to hit the bass drum when you hit that crash. Okay, so let's try that second bar now. So get used to that flow first of all. Once you got used to it, let's put it at the song tempo, and again we'll play that bar, so the second bar, then we'll have a bar's rest. Play the bar again, bar's rest. Okay, so we're just getting used to that flow, looping around those 2 bars. Bar of fill, bar's rest. Okay, so remember you're at mezzo forte, so let's try the second bar of the fill now. And then, yep, you guessed it, we've got to put those 2 bars together now. So bars 1 and 2, we've got a 2 bar fill. So the rhythm of the 2 bars is rest and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so you've got a combination of rhythms in the first bar and then just eighth notes in the second bar. Remembering to crash with that left hand on the last note of the fill as an accent. Okay, so let's try link up those 2 bars now, get a nice flow of the 2 bar fill, and again we're going to loop it through with a bar's rest. So you're going to play the 2 bar fill, then have a bar's rest. Back to the 2 bar fill, bar's rest. Okay, so let's try the whole fill now. And then after that second bar, you can see we've got a double bar line there. So that's like the intro fill, which takes you into the groove. So we're going to look at the groove now. So you can see we've got the letter A in a box there, above that third bar, okay, which is letting us know it's section A. So that's where the song really sort of kicks in there. So like I said, you've got like an intro fill, then we come in at section A with this groove, okay? So you've got a 2 bar groove, which is in bars 3 and 4. Now we've got a tie onto the first note, but we're just going to ignore that first just to get the groove down. So we've got eighth notes on the hi-hat for this groove, this 2 bar groove, just eighth notes for both bars, and the backbeat is alternating. So the first bar we've got a backbeat of 2 and of 4, which is obviously very funk, playing that offbeat on the and of 4 rather than the 4. And in the second bar, we're playing the 2 and the 4. So back to like an ordinary backbeat, which is most commonly played. 2 and 4, okay? So we've got 2 and a 4 in the first bar, 2, 4 in the second bar. So put your hands together. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. Yes, we're hitting 2 and a 4, 2, 4 in a 2 bar phrase. And your bass drum is playing the 1 of the first bar, okay, and the 3 and, so eighth notes on the 3 and then we've got the and of 1 in the second bar, the 3 and the and of 4. Okay, so putting those bass drums in as well for the 2 bars, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're hitting a lot of upbeats, those eighth note upbeats on the ands, which again is very funk, hitting those upbeats. Okay, so we want to try and get that down, that rhythm down, get used to the hands first of all, then bring in the bass drum nice and slow, get comfortable with the feel of the groove, putting everything together. And now we'll try that 2-bar groove, looped through, so we'll try it 4 times through the 2 bars. So we're playing 2 bars 4 times, so the 2-bar grooves. So let's try bars 3 and 4 of the piece, and again we're still in mezzo forte for this groove. And then in the next 2 bars, which are bars 5 and 6, the second and third bar of line 2, you've got the same groove that we've just played, that 2-bar groove, but it ends short to play a 2-beat fill. Okay, so we play that 2-bar groove all the way to the 3 of the second bar, and on the 3 we play an 8th note fill, which is part of the fill we played in the intro. Okay, where we're just playing single strokes around these 4 drums here. So snare, high tom, medium tom, low tom. So you're going to put that short 2-beat fill at the end of the 2-bar groove. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we'll try those 2 bars now. We'll just loop those 2 bars. Again, we'll loop them 4 times just to get used to those 2 bars. And then after bar 6, you can see we've got another double bar line there, letting us know there's a musical change. And now we're going to try the intro fill and the whole of section A, so we're going to put that together. So when you finish the fill, you finish with the crash and bass drum on the and of 4, and then when you come into the groove at the start of section A, which is bar 3, you can see we've got a tie there. So we're going to let that crash and bass ring for the first 8th note of the groove. So we're actually going to come in and start playing the groove on the and of 1 on the hi-hat. Okay, so we need to crash on the and of 4 of the fill, let it ring for the 1 of the groove, then play the and of 1 of the groove and carry on playing. So at the end of that fill, so if we play the second bar of the fill and the first bar of the groove, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you see, I let that first note of the groove ring, that 8th note, then I come in on the second 8th note. Okay, so we need to make sure we put that in as well. Okay, so let's try the intro fill and section A. And now we're going to try the intro fill and section A with the backing track. Okay, so this backing track is a funk rock piece, and it's very similar to the Wild Cherry song, Play That Funky Music. Okay, so if you're familiar with that song, that's the kind of style you're playing. So because we've got that element of funk, everything needs to be really tight, crisp and tidy. Okay, so it's a fast tempo, 120 beats per minute, so make sure you're comfortable at that tempo first before you play it with the track, because if you're rushing, you're not going to sound really tight and tidy, okay? The 2-bar fill is band hits, okay, so that rhythm that you're playing in the 2-bar fill, the rest of the band are playing as well. Okay, so you need to make sure that's really precise because it's got to line up with the rest of the band. Obviously, we're the timekeeper, so our time has to be really good because everyone's relying on our time for the time of the band. Okay, so make sure you're playing that rhythm really precisely because it's played with the rest of the band. Then we come into our groove. Make sure you have that tie at the start of the groove. The backbeat, obviously we've got that displacement on the first bar, hitting that and of 4, then we have that 2 and 4 in the second bar. Okay, now those backbeats are normally hits with the band as well, occasionally. Okay, so make sure they're really crisp and tidy, hitting the right parts of the bar. We've got a 2-bar groove played twice, and then we finish with that 2-beat fill. Okay, so let's try the intro fill and section A in time with a backing track. And now we come into section B, which starts at line 3 of the piece at bar 7. Now we've got the same 2-bar groove we've just played in section A, but we haven't got that tied note at the start of this groove. Okay, we just come in on the 1 with the crash. We're going to accent the crash. So we're going to hit that 1 and play that same 2-bar groove. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you're actually hitting that 1, you're playing the 1 this time, and then we've got the same 2 bars you played at the end of section A, okay, where you got the 2-bar groove right up until the 3 of the second bar, and then we're playing that single stroke fill around the kick, okay, that right, left. Okay, so that line there, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the only difference is you're playing the 1 at the start, okay, the start of those 4 bars. And then we've got a 4-bar repeat in the next line, which is the second line of section B. Okay, so we just repeat those 4 bars. So we're back to the crash, accented crash, and play those 4 bars again. Okay, so let's try the whole of section B now. And as the drum part of section B is pretty similar to the drum part in section A, what we're going to do is we're going to play from the top of the piece, that 2-bar intro fill, through section A and also through section B. Okay, we're going to link those parts together, make sure we can flow from each section. Okay, so let's try that from the top to the end of section B. And now we'll try that with the backing track. And now we come into section C, which starts at the 5th line of the piece at bar 15. So you can see the letter C in the box there, let you know it's section C. Now for this section, what we've got is we've got quarter notes on the hi-hat. Okay, so you're playing 1, 2, 3, 4. So another 2-bar groove, so you're playing quarter notes on the hi-hat for both bars. And then what we're doing is we're playing a snare drum on those downbeats as well. So the hands are lining up together in unison on all 4 downbeats for the 2 bars. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, then underneath that you've got a bass drum rhythm. So you've got 8th notes on the 1 of the first bar, 8th notes on the 3 of the first bar, and then an 8th note on the and of 4 in the first bar. So you've got 1 and, 3 and. Okay, so we get a lot of 8th notes because of that funk style coming in. Okay, so on the bass drum on the first bar you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the second bar you're just playing the upbeats of 1 and 2, so you're playing and. Okay, so putting those 2 bars together, that bass drum rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so putting those together, so you've got those hi-hat and snare drum playing the downbeats in unison for the 2 bars, and then that bass drum underneath. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's a very common groove that they used in the late 60s and 70s for like this style of music, that funk rock, and it was very commonly used on the Motown and Stax records. Okay, so it's a really iconic style groove, playing those downbeats on the hi-hat and snare drum. Okay, she's just holding that, that's keeping the time, and the bass drum's playing a nice rhythm underneath to complement it. Okay, so we're going to try that 2-bar groove now. Beneath the bar, you can see we've got an F, which is short for forte, which means loud. So we need to play this loud, this groove. And on the first note of the 2-bar groove, we're playing a crash. Okay, we've got an accent on it as well, so it needs to be hit with more emphasis and more force. So crashing, nice and hard. And then we're going to loop these 2 bars just to get used to this groove. Okay, we'll loop it through 4 times. And then in the next bar, which is bar 17, we're carrying on playing that Motown style groove, hitting those downbeats on the hi-hat and snare drum. We've got the same bass drum rhythm as we played in the first bar of the Motown groove. All we're doing is we're adding a crash cymbal on the and of 4. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, we've got an accent on the crash, and you hit it with some more emphasis, a bit more force. Now we're hitting that upbeat again, which obviously we hit in the intro feel as well. So again, very funk-like. Okay, playing that upbeat crash. So instead of the downbeat of the next bar, we're hitting it like early, and we've got another tie into the 1 of the first bar. So we're crashing on that and of 4. It's tied into the 1 of the next bar, so we need to let it ring. And this time it's tied to a quarter note, so we let it ring for the whole of the first beat in the next bar. And then we come in with a flam fill. So we flam on the snare drum. Okay, so you've got a flam on snare, then we play another flam on the 3, then we play a kick on the upbeat, flam on the 4, kick on the upbeat 4. Okay, so the rhythm of the next bar is 2, 3, and 4 and, because obviously we've let that note ring for the 1. So we flam on the 2. So you can play, well, I'm going to play a left flam on the 2. So we got left, right flam, kick, left flam, kick. So you got, remember you come in on the 2 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so make sure you can play that bar nice and clean, and then we're going to put the 2 bars together. So you've got that crash at the end of that first bar, which is bar 17. Let it ring for the 1 of bar 18, and then come in with your flam on the 2. Okay, so those 2 bars, nice and slow. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's try those 2 bars now, bars 17 and 18, and we'll loop those 4 times. And then in the next line, we've got the same 2-bar groove for the first 2 bars of the next line, bars 19 and 20. And then we've got the first bar of the groove in bar 21. Then we come into a fill at bar 22. Okay, we've got a whole 1-bar fill for this bar. So we're going to crash on the 1 with the snare drum. Okay, so we've got an accent on that crash, and nice force and emphasis on that 1. So you've got 1 together with the hands. Again, very funk-like, playing that snare with the crash. And then we've got 2 16th notes on the and of 1 on the high tom. So you've got 1 ender, that first beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we've got a whole count of 16th notes on the 2. So you're playing 2 E ender, again on the high tom. So those 2 beats, we got 1 ender, 2 E ender. And then you've got 8th notes on the 3 on the mid tom. So you've got 3 and, again we'll play them as singles, right, left. And then we've got 16 notes on the floor tom for 4. So 40 and, again as single strokes. So the second half of the fill is 3 and 40 and. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that whole single stroke fill, starting with the crash and snare, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's try that fill now. We'll loop that fill through 4 times again, okay, just to get used to the rhythm and the orchestration, okay, flowing round that kit again. Okay, so let's try bar 22 now in time with the metronome. And as we're playing in 2-bar phrases, we'll put the previous bar before that fill as well, okay? So we'll try bars 21 and 22. So you've got the first bar of that 2-bar Motown style groove, and then we come into our 1-bar fill. Okay, so let's try bars 21 and 22. Back to back, loop through 4 times. And that brings us to the end of section C. So we've got 2 lines for section C, which are lines 5 and 6 of the piece. So we're going to put that together. So this section is all at forte, which is loud. So we need a lot of energy in this section. Remember, you're at funk, so everything's got to be tight and crisp. Make sure those downbeats are nice and in place. Okay, you're hitting the start of each beat. You've got hi-hats and snare drum in unison, so make sure they're right in unison. They're not playing flams. Hold that groove really solidly. Make sure that bass drum is consistent. Then we've got the fills at the end of each line, okay? So you've got the flam fill at the end of the first line, and then you've got the single stroke fill at the end of the second line of section C, okay? So let's try the whole section now, section C. And now we'll try section C in time with a backing track. And now we come into the final section of the song, section D. So you can see we've got the letter D in a box there above the first bar of line 7, which is bar 23 of the piece. Now for this first line of section D, we play the same 4 bars that we played at the start of section B. So we've got that 2-bar funk rock groove played at mezzo forte. So you can see we've got MF beneath the first bar of section D, let you know we're back to mezzo forte, half loud. So we play that 2-bar groove twice, but we're ending the second time with that 2-beat feel around the kit single strokes. Okay, exactly what we played in the first 4 bars of section B. Then we come into the next line of section D, line 8 of the piece, at bar 27 and 28, where we got the same 2-bar groove played again there. So coming into bar 29, which is the last bar of line 8, we just change it up. We're playing a groove, but we're crashing on the and of 4. That upbeat of 4, which again is very funk-like, which we've done a couple of times previous in this piece. So for that bar 29, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so crashing on the and of 4. Again, we've got an accent on that crash, so we need to hit it with more emphasis, more force, because it's got another tie on it. So it needs to ring through for the first note of the next bar, which is the quarter note, okay? So we're going to crash on that and of 4, hold it for the quarter note, because it's tied to that quarter note in the next bar. And then we've got 3 quarter notes on the hi-hat for the rest of the next bar. So bar 30, which is the first bar of the line of the final line. Okay, so playing bars 29 and 30, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let that accented crash ring for the first quarter note of bar 30, and we're just playing 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's try those 2 bars now looped through a mezzo forte. And then we come into the final 2 bars of the piece. Okay, now for these 2 bars, we're playing the same fill that we played in the intro, so the first 2 bars of the piece, but this time, rather than just resting on the 1, we're playing a hi-hat on the 1. So we're going to play that with the right hand, and then play the fill, the same sticking that we played in the intro. Okay, so we're just playing that hi-hat on the 1. Okay, at the end of the fill, you've got that crash on the and the 4 again with a tie, and you can see we've got LV there, which is short for laisser vibrer, which means to let that note ring freely. Okay, so don't dampen it, so just hit that crash and let it ring. Okay, let all that tone come out of the cymbal, okay, to finish the piece. Okay, so let's try those final 2 bars of the piece now, which is the same fill you've already played, but we're just adding that hi-hat on the 1 of the first bar of the fill. And now we try the whole of section D, so we're back to that familiar 2-bar funk rock groove that we had in section B. We've got some slight change-ups in this section, okay, that we need to put in, and we're ending with that fill that we started with. Just make sure we add that 1 on the hi-hat and let that note ring at the end of the fill. Okay, so let's try the whole of section D. And now we'll try section D with the backing track. So remember, be that funk drummer, that tidy, tight drummer, okay? Make sure everything's precise and in time. And that 2-bar fill that we end with is going to be band hits again. So make sure that's really precisely with the rest of the band. Finish with that accented crash and let that note ring to finish. Okay, so let's try the whole of section D now with the backing track. And now we'll try section C and D. So we're going to link those 2 sections together now. So we've got that Motown style groove where we're holding those downbeats on the hi-hat and snare for section C. We've got those 2 fills at the end of each line of section C. And that big fill at the end of section C, single strokes around the kit, is going to take us into section D. So remember, at section D we drop down to mezzo forte because we're at forte in section C. Okay, so you're nice and loud in section C, then after that fill we flow into section D, we come back down to mezzo forte and we play through that 2-bar groove, okay, that we're repeating, and slight change ups in section D, finishing with that fill, band hits, and ending with the crash. Okay, so let's try section C and D. And now we'll try section C and D in time with a backing track. So now we've linked up the first 2 sections of the piece and the second 2 sections of the piece. We're going to link it all together now. Okay, so we're going to play the whole piece. So you've got that 2-bar fill that we come in with, then we come into that 2-bar funk rock groove in section A, ending with the 2-beat fill, coming into section B where we've got the same groove and the same fill. We've got a 4-bar repeat. Then we come into section C where we rise the dynamic from mezzo forte to forte. We're playing that Motown stack style groove, holding those downbeats on the hi-hat and snare, playing that bass drum rhythm underneath, and we've got 2 fills at the end of each line of section C. Then we flow from that fill at the end of section C into section D where we come back down to mezzo forte, and we're back to that 2-bar funk rock groove, okay, with the change-ups ending with the fill. Okay, so let's try the whole piece now at 120 beats per minute. And then finally, we're going to play the whole piece in time with the backing track. Okay, so remember, I can't reiterate enough, be really tidy and tight when you're playing this piece. It's funk, okay, it's funk style rock, funk rock. So you need to make sure it's nice and tight because you've got those hits with the brass, okay? Those brass got nice staccato, sharp notes that are really abrupt, that really come out nicely, and you need to make sure those hits are really in time because obviously that accentuates that kind of feel. Okay, so if you're out of time with those brass notes, obviously it's just going to sound untidy. So it's going to be nice and tight to make sure that fill, all those notes are in the right places because they are band hits. Really feel the groove. Make sure the backbeats, you're really feeling that backbeat. You've got that offbeat in the first bar and then you're back on the beat in the second bar. Okay, you've got that contrast, which is very common in funk. Okay, flowing into section C, make sure that Motown stack style groove is really again tidy, just hitting those downbeats with the hands really neatly, and that will hold the rest of the groove together. Okay, where that bass drum comes in underneath. Make sure the flams are nice and tidy. Finish with the single stroke fills of section C, flowing into section D, back to that solid groove. Okay, ending with a really tidy fill with the rest of the band. Okay, so be neat, precise, comfortable, and enjoy it. It's really good feeling, this song. Okay, so make sure you're feeling it, you're portraying it in your playing. Let's ride the whole piece in time with the backing track. So I hope you enjoyed that piece. So remember, as always, take your time with each part. Get comfortable with it. Make sure it's feeling good. If it's feeling good, it's going to sound good. If you're pushing yourself too much, you're playing it too fast and it doesn't feel good when you're playing it, it's not going to sound good. Okay, so spend some time absorbing the rhythms, absorbing the orchestration. You'll start to build the muscle memory and then you'll just start to flow. Okay, so take each part individually, then build it up. Play a section, then put 2 sections together, then put the whole piece together once you're ready. But don't rush. Make sure it feels good, then it sounds good. If you sound good, people want to play with you. Okay, they want to play with you as the drummer in their band because you make the rest of the band sound good. Okay, so take your time with each part. Have fun, and we'll see you in the next lesson.